Sustainability Agency to order for November 12th, 2020. And please conduct the roll call formally and also introduce staff that's present and those on the phone or in the waiting room, I guess.
Chair Brown.
Here.
Director Crane is absent. Director White.
Here.
Director Mack is absent. Director Brandy Brown is absent. And Director Robinson.
I'm here.
Great. And I'll ask Director Robinson to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please.
Pledge allegiance to the flag, United States of America, the republic for which it stands, one nation.
Under God.
Indivisible.
Indivisible. With liberty.
Indivisible.
Justice for all.
Liberty and justice for all.
And Chair Brown, Director Crane has joined the meeting.
Wonderful.
Director Crane, we're going to mark you as here.
All right. I think we've all been through enough of these meetings. We know the protocol. Remain on mute until you want to speak. State your name before speaking. So we're going to go forward. We'll go to item number 3, consent items, and that's approval of minutes from the September 10th, 2020 meeting. I'd like to just comment that I didn't find any corrections. Directors, did you? No one's chiming in, so I will ask for a motion.
Oh, this is Al White. I'll move to approve the consent items.
Douglas Crane, I'll second.
Okay. We have a motion and a second. Please conduct the roll call vote.
Chair Brown.
Yes.
Director Crane.
Aye.
Director White. Yeah, did you say yes, Director White?
Yes. Yes, I said yes.
Director Robinson.
Aye.
And then Director Mack and Brown are absent. Motion carries.
Thank you very much. And next we'll move on to item 4, staff updates. Ms. Duquette, please take it from there.
Good afternoon, board. We're going to go over a few things. Today on the line, we have Andrew Bake with the Water Agency. We have our Larry Walker team, Amir and Laura on the line. We just wanted to go over a couple things. One is 2020 is the end of our current appointment period for this board. So we're going to go through the reappointment process for calendar year 2021, 2022. So many of your agencies do the assigning of boards and commissions either during December or January. So at the beginning of December, we're going to reach out to your agencies, provide a reminder that we'll need a resolution appointing a director and an alternate, and also a letter just reaffirming your current TAC members. So just be aware of that. I hope we'll see many of you guys again in 2021. And so just know that that is going to be coming out. And once you've adopted your resolution, you can email it to Andrew and myself, ideally by the end of January. We're going to get to our calendar later, but our first meeting will be in February.
Ms. Duquette?
Yes.
This is Chair Brown. On the resolution, I do have a template. So would you like for me to send it to you so that you can distribute to all the nominating bodies?
Yes, that would be great and make things easier for some of our members. And for the agricultural seat, we'll be reaching out to the Farm Bureau who assists in that reappointment process. And we're working with the tribal representatives to firm up the details of that appointment process for 2021. The second item, just a reminder, so we've put in data requests for a number of the local agencies for their information. So we will be following up this month and next month for that information. You've probably already heard from us, but that's our 2 staff updates for today.
Okay, this is Chair Brown. Thank you very much. And do you have a list of the entities that you've requested data from?
Yes, we do. It's most of the water agencies in City of Ukiah. And most of everyone has been very helpful. And, you know, we'll follow up as we need information.
Okay, thank you for that further detail. We'll move on to item number 5. This is public comment on items not on the agenda. So anyone that would like to speak, we'd like to hear you, and just know that you have 3 minutes. So Ms. Duquette, is there anyone in the waiting room that would like to speak?
I don't see anyone yet, but if you would like to make public comment, you can raise your hand, or if you're joining us by phone, you can press *9. And it doesn't look like we have any hands raised.
Okay, thank you.
Wait. Oh, I have one hand raised. The caller joining us with their hand raised, if you can press *6 to unmute, and you can move forward with your public comment.
Hello, this is Ukiah Parmenter. I live in Redwood Valley. My husband and I have lived here for over 25 years, and we're concerned about potential changes in the usage of our well. We have a single family residence. We irrigate our property, and we were talking to another friend who's a homeowner on Road J, and one of the concerns that he had, and I'm going to bring it up because he wasn't able to attend the meeting. He says the maps that show groundwater usage currently, it seems that you're using maps from 2010. Will those maps be updated to reflect changes in the valley as a result of the fires 3 years ago in 2017? And also, will they reflect potential cannabis farm usage, since cannabis production seems to be increasing in the valley? And since cannabis is a large consumer of water, we're concerned if that's being factored into water usage. Is that part of agriculture usage? And how will that impact just regular homeowners who don't need that much water, but might be impacted with higher rates and lower usage amounts because a larger amount of water is being allocated to the cannabis farmers?
I would like to ask the speaker to, Lucia is your first name,
Right.
correct? And please give us your last name along with spelling.
Sure. The last name is Parmenter, Parmenter.
Thank you so much. So staff, maybe you want to respond. Usually we don't respond to public comment, but you've brought up some good points. Ms. Duquette?
Sarah Duquette, Mendocino County. I'll have to check in terms of the maps she's referencing for 2010. We are looking at agricultural production within the model and looking at different scenarios and doing calculations regarding the different agricultural products, including cannabis. And I'll let Larry Walker and Associates add any comments to that, but we are looking at the agricultural product.
Vice Chair Crane with a comment. It may be appropriate to get the contact information so that the information you find can be sent off to the speaker. Thank you.
And to our commenter, we have your name and we have your number, and we can follow up with you.
And thank you very much for participating, and hopefully you will continue to participate in the future. We will be talking about monitoring later on our agenda. So you may want to continue being with us, but thank you very much for your public comment. Moving on to item 6, we have action item. 6A, discussion and possible action, including adoption of the 2021 Board of Directors Master Meeting Calendar. Ms. Duquette?
Sarah Duquette.
I think everything was in the packet, so just give us a brief presentation and we may have questions or comments.
Sarah Duquette, Mendocino County. So in your packet, in the PDF, it's page 10. You'll see the proposed calendar for next year, and it's going to be a busy year. We have a lot to go through to finish up the groundwater plan before we submit. So we will start our first meeting of the year in February, and we have on the agenda meetings every month, February through July, and then we should have our draft public GSP out in the summer, August, September, and then we'd come back for meetings in October and November for final adoption. So we are taking a break in August and September, and that's going to be our public comment period for the plan, and then we'll come back from there. We should have everything wrapped up by November, but in case we need an extra meeting, we can set one in December, but that's an overview of the calendar. And we're at our normal times, which is the second Thursday of the month at 1:30. And we'll be virtual until COVID restrictions change, and then once we're out of that, we'll be back at the admin center in Ukiah in the board chambers.
Okay, thank you very much. Directors, any questions or comment?
I appreciate the break set up for harvest right there. We can call it public comment, but it's a harvest break. Thank you.
Anyone else? Hearing no one, we'll go to public comment. Is there any comment from the public? Ms. Duquette?
And a reminder, you can raise your hand or press *9 if you're joining us on the phone. And I see no one in the queue for public comment.
Okay, thank you. And this is an action item. So I would like to entertain approval of the calendar for the 2021 year. Directors?
This is
Oh,
Zach
I see.
Robinson. I move to approve.
Do we have a second?
This is Al White. I'll second it.
And
Thank you.
Chair Brown, before we move to vote, we do have a caller raising their hand.
Okay.
So if our caller can press *6 to unmute.
Hello, this is Lucia Parmenter again. There's going to be a technical meeting on the 18th. What sorts of things are discussed at the technical meeting? What's considered technical? And is that something that we are allowed to participate in?
Ms. Duquette?
Sarah Duquette, Mendocino County. Our technical advisory committee is made up of technical staff from our member agencies, as well as additional agencies like Sonoma Water and Resource Conservation District. They're looking over the technical details of the GSP and make recommendations to the board. All of those meetings are open to the public. They are typically the second Wednesday of the month at 1 o'clock. This month it's on the 18th because of the Veterans holiday. And we publish the agendas usually on Friday or on Mondays with the agenda, the presentation, and the Zoom details. So members of the public are welcome to attend. And you can check back at our website or sign up for e-notifications on our website when we publish. And
So the conclusions that you're using right now to formulate your plan are based on the 2010 map, though? Is that true?
there has been a lot of maps, a lot of data gathering, as well as a groundwater and surface water model. So it's not just one map. So I would welcome you to come to our technical meeting or call the water agency, and we'd love to chat with you. But there is a lot of data gathering, maps, modeling that has gone into this project. It's not just one map from 2010.
Okay, thank you.
And also including those on the board as well as the TAC, their participation and comments as well. And certainly participate if you can. And obviously you're from Redwood Valley. So I'll tell you the chair of the TAC currently is Glenn McGordy. And Glenn is going to be your first district supervisor.
Right.
Here very soon.
And all of our past agendas and presentations and information about the project that we started in 2017 are all available online.
Good point. Thank you for raising that. Anything else, ma'am?
No, that's it. Thank you for answering my question.
Absolutely, and thank you. Okay, we have a motion on the table. Please conduct a roll call.
Chair Brown,
Yes?
Director Crane,
Aye.
Director White,
Aye.
Director Robinson,
Aye.
and Director Mack and Director Brown are absent.
Okay, motion carries. Moving on to 6B, update on outreach and working group meetings. Ms. Duquette, can we have a presentation, please? I participated in all of them, I think. But you're talking about the last 3 months, so I may have missed one. But would you please go forward?
Yes, Sarah Duquette, Mendocino County. And like we've done before, we're gonna pull up a PowerPoint presentation that's gonna take us through most of these items, B through E.
Okay, so you wanna take B through E and lump them together?
We'll tell you when we leave from one item to another, but reference your
Okay.
large PowerPoint presentation that's been attached to the agenda.
And it was attached to the agenda, and anyone that's participating, by phone, you can go to the website on the county and look at the agenda packet, and the PowerPoint should be there. Okay, so
And-
Ms. Duquette and Laura, you may want to continue on.
And I don't know if that's a problem. I just noticed that we flipped B and C. So we have C first and B after. Is that a problem? Or I just don't want to mess up with the package. So
Chair Brown, is that okay that we go ahead and go to 6C first and then we'll go to 6B?
That works for me, and I think it would work for everyone else. That is perfectly fine with me.
Thank you.
Thank
Then
you
we'll
so
move
much.
forward with 6C.
okay, so Laura Foglia, Larry Walker Associates. I will share my screen so we can follow the presentation together. And okay, so, and I'll get it started and then I'll pass it on to Amir so that I will not put everybody to sleep right away. So this is the outline, which is pretty much touching all the points that you have in your agenda package. As I said, I'm sorry, we flipped the first two. So I will start with telling you something about the monitoring network with a perspective which is not only updating you on what we are doing in terms of installation, but also why do we do that? So what do we need? So I want to introduce the GSP monitoring network concept, which is created. And then we have an update on the outreach meetings that happened in the past 3 months, quite a few of them, and where we are with writing this giant document, which is coming piece by piece right now. And then we will have a longer discussion, I think, about the future scenarios that we want to consider in the plan. And we had some preliminary discussion with some of the groups in smaller meetings, and we already have had a preliminary discussion with the TAC. So we felt like it's time for just discussing it a little bit more also at the board meeting. So let's go into the introduction to the GSP monitoring network, and I'll give you the updates on what's where we are with the instrumentation of wells and stream gauges. We developed this mostly to tell you the monitoring network is not only gathering the data that we have and start collecting new data, but the monitoring network is really like the key to demonstrate that in the next 20 to 50 years, the GSA, the basin is sustainable and the GSA is successful with its management. So the network is really important, and what we include in the GSP as monitoring network is, we already had some of this discussion about water quality, but it's really what the GSA will have to keep reporting to DWR every year. So that's gonna be the duty of the GSA, reporting on all the data that are included in the GSP monitoring network. And the monitoring network might be different for each of the sustainability indicators. Remember that we were discussing about degradation of groundwater quality, lowering levels, decreasing in storage, impact on interconnected surface water, and land subsidence. We don't really have land subsidence. We kind of crossed it out right away, but we need to have a network that demonstrates each of these indicators. So some data might be useful for more than one indicators, but we still need to keep everything in mind. And what we need to do in the GSP, in the plan, is really demonstrate that the network has sufficient temporal frequency and spatial distribution. And DWR provides some guidelines on what they are expecting. We have already seen that unfortunately in Ukiah Valley, we don't really have a lot of long-term data. So that's gonna be a big data gap that we will point out in the plan, but we need a clear direction on how do we want to fill this data gap. So
I don't mean to interrupt,
sure.
but I just want to let the directors know if you would like to ask a question as we're going through the presentation, just do so stating your name first.
Perfect. Thank you. Okay. So, and the network is really going to help us demonstrating short-term, seasonal, and long-term trends. It will tell us and it will demonstrate to the Department of Water Resources that we are making progresses toward achieving the measurable objectives. It will monitor the impacts on to the beneficial uses and users of groundwater, so all of them. And it will also be what we will be using to demonstrate the changes in the groundwater condition that are relative to measurable objective and minimum thresholds. And then it will also be useful to double check, our groundwater model, actually integrated surface water groundwater model. We look at the water budget components for every year, and the data will help us quantify those annual changes and double check our model. This is taken from some direction provided from Department of Water Resources, which is about the density and the extent of the monitoring network. And based on some literature, we basically have suggestion about how many wells do we need to monitor to demonstrate sustainability. And for using different type of approaches, what we can see, so the Ukiah Valley groundwater basin is about 59 square miles. And so the suggestion is for a number of wells that ranges between 2 and 10. So obviously probably 2, we would agree that is not that much, but what we know is that in the entire basin, we have only 4 wells with a long history of data. So probably those 4 wells will need to be included. And that's why we are trying to keep all of them into our network. And again, it's not a fixed rule, but it's to provide you with an idea of what's required. And so what have we done up to now in terms of installation? Because those are kind of the requirements for just meeting the minimum criteria, but we really want to have a network that is going to improve our understanding of the system. And what we think it's important is not only the spatial distribution of these wells, but also we probably need to move more and more into continuous data collection. So data collected in real time that really can tell us how the system reacts to precipitation, changes in releases from Lake Mendocino, or whatever can happen in the valley. And what we have done up to now is we instrumented with continuous pressure transducers 4 existing CastGem wells. And the plan is to instrument for at least 4 more. Department of Water Resources will be drilling 3 or 4 wells, and 2 of these wells will be completion wells, which means there will be different groundwater depth measured. And the groundwater levels are already now, and we will be happy to share with whoever is curious to see them. The data are already available on a LWA portal, and that actually works also on your phone if you just want to see every day the data are updated, so we can really see the real-time condition of the 4 CastGem well that we have already instrumented. Second is the stream flow monitoring. So all over the valley, we have 4 existing USGS stream flow gauges, and we are using those for our modeling efforts. But in the second round of the grant, in the Prop 68 grant, we suggested to include new data collection for stream flow. And we are working on, we have already been quite successful in scouting a couple of locations. Mike helped us, and CLSI helped us with finding spots where the stream gauges can be installed. And one is gonna be on the Russian River in Redwood Valley, and the other one on Forsyth Creek. And we are still hoping to have them installed before the first serious rain this fall. Otherwise, we will probably have to go to next summer. And as a summary, if we think about the network for groundwater levels, what we are suggesting is really to rely on CastGem well and that we are instrumenting, and the Department of Water Resources new wells that will be drilled. And this goes on top of the 4 DWR wells that I mentioned earlier, which are the only 4 wells for which we have really at least 30 years of data. And it's nice to have a long time series of data before making a decision. We are also finding another problem, which is related to how we define the aquifer in the conceptual model, in the hydrogeological conceptual model. And actually, we are not planning to change that much, but just some language probably, because if we really have only one well, which is collecting data in the lower portion of the aquifer, what we call aquifer 2 and aquifer 3. There will be more coming with these technical support services wells that DWR will be installing, but we don't have them right now. So we are kind of suggesting to you to couple Aquifer 2 and Aquifer 3 together, so that we have one network just for those two aquifers, and then one network for the more shallow aquifer, which is Aquifer 1. And so this would give us basically 3 wells available right now for Aquifer 1 well for Aquifer 2 and 3. And then the second part of the equation in this slide is really what we are starting collecting now and what is our ideal dream plan for the next 5 years of implementation. So for Aquifer 1, we are shooting for adding 6 to 8 continuous measurements plus the 4 TSS wells. And for Aquifer 2 and 3, we will have nested, instrumented, and one more well nested with instruments, and then 2 or 3 TSS wells. And obviously this is having only one value for now for setting the criteria might be limited, so we will have to talk about it, but this is where we are right now. And definitely this is basically going to affect a little bit how we will discuss setting sustainable management criteria for eventually the lowering of groundwater levels, because we cannot rely on many information. And we started a discussion at the TAC. I think we will bring it back next time so that everybody can see where we are. We also developed in the network looking at the existing data for groundwater quality, because we already discussed this, and it looks for water quality, it's our goal is to rely as much as possible on wells that are already collecting data. And it looks like when we discussed the water quality with the TAC and with the board, we didn't receive many receive comments against this approach. This will also kind of take away some burden from the GSA, and it looks like the public supply wells are already regularly collecting data, and they are already regularly submitting everything to DWR. So it looks like relying on those data might be the best solution. And we are wrapping up this approach in terms of water quality into the GSP chapter, and we should have it ready, I think, by the end of the month, so that then it will go first to the TAC and then will be available for review. We also need a network for interconnected surface water and groundwater dependent ecosystem. We just got it started. It's really, this type of network is not there right now. So we need to design it and decide what it's needed and what we want to include. If you remember, we presented many times the idea of the transects of well across the rivers. So those will be the key components of this monitoring network for interconnected surface water. At the same time, we are exploring this idea of using satellite images as data, as a way to provide data for GDEs and surface water interconnection. And it looks like it may work. So we are mapping, and this is what it's in the lower left side of your slide. In, for example, this is McNabb Creek, and we were trying to map basically when the river is flowing and when the creek is flowing and when it's not flowing. And or I think the most reliable information is when it's really stop flowing. And it looks like in dry years, the creek is already stopping flowing in June. When it's a little bit more a normal year, there is flow until almost July. And in wet year, there is flow until August. And these are type of information that the satellite data can give to us. And we are exploring this this opportunity as a component of the monitoring network. Because as I said, we don't really have groundwater elevation data or other type of data that we can use right now for interconnected surface water. So this is our suggestion, our approach. We can clearly see that in the plan, we will have a big data gap chapter, because that's gonna be part of what we will do in the implementation, and it's really gathering the data that we don't have right now. Okay, any questions about where we are with our monitoring network design?
And this is agenda item C, correct?
Yes, sorry, Carrie.
That's all right. Because I would also like to see if there's public comment. So directors, do you have statements, questions? Hearing none. Anyone from the public would like to speak?
And you can raise your hand or push, I see one public comment, can push *6 to unmute.
Hello, this is Lucia Parmenter again. So it sounds that there's a gap in information. So you're looking forward to collecting more data, and you're going to be utilizing more like satellite imaging, but your information on the reduction in groundwater levels is speculation at this point. You don't have any hard data that would confirm that.
No, we have some data, and we started summarizing some of the data at the previous TAC meeting, and we will bring it out again. Our main concern is that we know that we have long-term data only for 4 wells. So this can take us just up to a certain point, but our goal right now is to use those 4 wells for which we have 40 or 50 years of data. To basically start somewhere with our assumption and then really design the network for the future. Just to give you some more details, so that the plan really doesn't expect to be is not expected to be perfect by January 2022. It's the first phase of the plan. And it's totally acceptable that a big component of the plan is really the data gap, because not all the basins have all the information that are needed. So we can get started, demonstrate that we have something solid. We are developing a model that actually it's using also other data, because so the 4 wells are the ones with long-term. But in the last 4 or 5 years, we have more data already collected. And so those data can be included already in the model. The problem is that they are not really long histories, so they don't have long history. So that we don't want to make too much out of only 4 or 5 years of data. But we have something to start, and the goal is really to learn as much as we can about the system to properly design the next steps.
Where are the 2 aquifers in Redwood Valley, and are those currently monitored? I'm having a hard time visualizing on the map where there might be aquifers that are, and are there just the 2 major aquifers in Redwood Valley?
So we can actually, I think we can send to you all the presentation that we did about the hydrogeological conceptual model. The aquifers are not always everywhere. So sometimes, basically sometimes we have only one aquifer and the other, which is outcropping. So the geology is not so simple. And we can send it to you as needed.
Okay. Will that be via email, or how?
I don't know, Sarah. I think it's all up on the website, right? So maybe we can just share the webpage.
Yes, the previous presentations for the Technical Advisory Committee is on our webpage for the TAC agenda and minutes.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, any other public comment? Hearing none, we'll go back up. Is B going to be next?
Yeah.
Okay, update on outreach and working group meetings. Please go
Yes.
forward.
Perfect, thank you. And so we did a lot of meetings in the past 3 months, even if we didn't really meet with you guys. So as you know, and some of you were there, we had the first public meeting on September 29. We did it via Zoom with both an English and Spanish translation. And the recordings is available on the county website on YouTube. I think we didn't have a lot of participation, but we hope that it was a good starting point. I mean, we had some people and we had a good question. I think it was a good meeting. And we are planning on more. So there will be more public meetings down the road, where probably one in early next year, something like February, if I'm not wrong. Where we will also be presenting more technical detail on the model and what we are developing. This one has been more like getting people on the same page about Sigma. We also had a meeting with tribal representative, and that happened in on October 19, and we are planning on a follow-up meeting in December. We are having stakeholder interviews with like something similar to what we did at the very beginning of the process. And we already had a couple of meetings with Sonoma Water. We have a meeting with the Farm Bureau scheduled in November. We already had meetings with City of Ukiah, and we are going to follow up with them again. We also had a meeting on September 30 to discuss some PVP Potter Valley scenario, and I think it was a good meeting, and some of the discussion will be presented by Amir just later today. And we also had a working group to start a more in-depth discussion about groundwater levels. And I feel like in Ukiah, you know, chronic lowering of groundwater levels is really what the Sigma law mentioned. What we have seen that in Ukiah Valley, we cannot really talking about chronic lowering. It's more, it's way more complex than that. We don't just see levels going down. And we had that first meeting on October 28. We expect to have more discussion at the TAC meeting next week, and then probably we will follow up to get to a decision. And this is, I think, all of that. Did I forget something, Sarah?
I just want to briefly mention as well that at our public meeting, we had participation from commissioners from the Mendocino County Planning Commission and also the Redwood Valley Municipal Advisory Commission. And so we'll continue to outreach to them and engage with those two bodies as we move into February to do our next kind of public meetings around the model. So I just want to let you guys know that as well.
Okay.
Okay, so, Mr. Kett, do we have any public comment?
Public comment, *9 to raise your hand, or just raise your hand if you're joining us on the computer. And I don't see any.
Okay, and I forgot to ask directors, do you have any comments, statements on 6B? I just have one comment. We may have changing planning commissioners. So we need to keep that in mind as a group if you go back before them. So just wanted to put that into the mix. All right. So now are we on to D? Have we concluded that section?
Yes.
Okay. So D, regarding the development of groundwater sustainability plan, chapters and upcoming opportunities for review. Ladies, please go forward.
Thank you. So, and this will be pretty brief, but I mainly want to update everyone on where we are if you remember, you've seen these slides many times. I think it will come back and back again. But remember, we have to write these 5 big chapters and a lot of appendices. And what we have done in this past couple of months is trying to really wrap up chapter 2, most of it, which is the plan area and basin settings. And then Andrew at the county is really working hard on wrapping up chapter 1. So chapter 1 and chapter 2 are almost are quite in a good condition and good shape. And we also started working on chapter 3 about sustainable management criteria. And we are now concentrating mostly on summarizing the water quality discussion that we already had in the past and the subsidence discussion, because that one luckily was a pretty easy one. So in terms of timing and what it's the status of chapter 2, the key components are there, and we expect to still have something to be delivered this month. The final modeling appendix and the water budget appendix are expected later on in 2021, because we are wrapping up the model right now. But it's really all coming. It's really all coming together. And obviously, the water quality appendix, November 2021. Sorry, it's a typo. It's 2020. November 2021. Hopefully, we are all done. And so this is these are the key components of the chapter. And I have to say we are in good shape with most of them. And the modeling. We just needed to have the time to finalizing and writing in a modeling appendix. So what we can see, so that chapter 2 is out for review with the TAC right now. So we are getting the comments back. We will include the comments, and then it will be ready for board review. Am I right, Sarah? I think probably as soon as the comments from the TAC.
Probably in late January, early February, it will be out for board review and public comments for chapters 1 and 2.
Yeah. And we are just taking time because some of the comments from the TAC were extensive comments. So we are including everything again. We'll do another full round. But in this way, basically you will have the entire chapter 2 ready all at once. And for chapter 3, we are working not as the chapter with the chapter as a total, but we are working by criteria, by indicators. So we are, as I said, we expect to have the water quality and subsidence indicators written up by November and out for review to the TAC. And then the next one that we will be discussing and will be ready for review are lowering levels and reduction in storage by February 2021, and the interconnected surface water and GDEs by April 2021. And we gave ourselves a little bit more time, but this is pretty much following a good time frame, and this will give us enough time for getting comments and incorporating all the comments. At the same time, the project and management actions, which is chapter 4, they kind of go in parallel with chapter 3. So when at the TAC and at the board, we talk about criteria, obviously we need to talk also about action that can help and future management that can help, and you will see it later. So we expect to have the final done by April, May, but we will be discussing as we go about actions. And then the implementation is really the last component. And we are planning to, it's also not going to be the longest one. So we are we plan to have it delivered probably by June. And we expect this is when chapters go to the TAC. So then depending on the timing of the TAC for providing comments and the how extensive the comments are, after that we can see components coming to the board for review. But you will be updated in terms of the content through the meetings. And I think that's it.
Just to quickly add too, as they roll out, you'll have an opportunity to comment, but then there'll be a rollout of the final actual GSP, which will occur probably in August. And that will have probably a longer comment period, also a public hearing.
Yeah,
Okay.
and at that point is when the public is really welcome to provide all the possible comments. Yeah.
All right. This is Chair Brown. Directors, any statements or comments, questions? Hearing none, do we have any from the public?
We have one from the public. You can press *6 to unmute. *6 to unmute.
I think I was seeing one of the points during the PowerPoint presentation saying that Forsyth Creek is due to have another monitor or a monitor installed, but it may not get installed before this initial rain season, which might even be starting tomorrow. So if it isn't able to accumulate data from the entire rain season and is delayed until next season, that should impact the findings and your conclusions that you come up with if you're missing a whole rain season. True?
So
I'm sorry, Sarah.
I was going to say we have existing gauges as well as wells that we're using, but one of the requirements of SGMA is that we build a monitoring network that we have to report yearly during the 20-year period of the plan. So the gauge at Forsyth Creek is a part of that monitoring network we're required to put together and report on yearly over the 20 years. But we do have 4 existing USGS gauges that we're using that have long-term data. So that's the new gauges will help make a more robust monitoring network that will be able to track and get better data over 20 years.
But Forsyth Creek is not a part of that system yet. It's yet to be installed.
Not yet. We just got grant dollars to put in new wells and new gauges. So we're bringing online 2 new gauges over either this month or in the springtime. And that will be part of our monitoring network we'll be monitoring for the next 20 years.
Great, thank you.
Okay, anyone else for public comment? Okay, then we will move on to C, presentation and discussion regarding the future scenarios and collaboration with Sonoma Water. Please go forward.
Thank you, Carrie. So I'll get it started and then pass it to Amir. We want to point out 2 things. We are looking at future scenarios from 2 different perspectives. We have future scenarios that are related mostly to climate change, and Amir will explain that, and we already kind of touched base on that, but some of the climate change scenarios have been DWR provided guidelines on how to discuss climate change in our and consider climate change in our plan. So we will present to you some ideas and a summary of what we got out of the survey that we have done before the summer. The other type of scenarios include simulation of possible projects and management actions that the GSA may want to include in the plan as possible measure to actions to really help demonstrating the sustainability in the next 20 years. We can also have a combination of this because we understand that climate change needs to be considered, and maybe we want to see what happens with management action on top of climate change. And I think, Amir, this is all yours, so we can have an introduction on what is the baseline scenarios that we need to use and where we are right now in developing our kind of table with a summary of scenarios. You know, ideally, I think everybody would want to run as many scenarios as possible, but we need to kind of get to a stop point for this preliminary phase of the plan, and then think about future actions. Amir, it's all yours. I can stop. You can share?
Yes, that would work.
Okay.
Okay, I'm trying to.
Is he speaking? Because I cannot hear him.
Yes, sorry. This is Amir Mani from Groundwater Associates. I'm hoping that you can hear me now. Can you see the screen that I shared? So the presentation. Okay. So like Laura said, I just want to take a step back. So we discussed this a couple of months ago, and then we sent you a survey through SurveyMonkey that asked questions about the future scenarios that you would want to see us run. So the reason that we did that and the reason that we need these future scenarios, like Laura mentioned, is these help us put together those management actions that we were just talking about and also set sustainable management criteria. So how we're going to use them is, we're developing a model, we're calibrating it now so we can make changes in that model and then represent some of these scenarios as best as we can based on the model's capabilities into our simulation and kind of show how the future would look like, uncertainties included. And then based on those, then they would help us in setting management actions, setting criteria, and basically seeing what would be the best management path and sustainability path for this CSV. So the first step towards that, as we discussed last time, is the future baseline. So I just put the regulation from the SIGMA regulations up in section 354.18C3. It describes what is counted as future baseline. So if you move to the third line here, it says a projected hydrology shall utilize 50 years of historical precipitation, evapotranspiration, and stream flow information as the baseline condition for estimating future hydrology. So basically directs us to use at least a 50-year timeline as a future baseline. Now, what future baseline means is this is our baseline for future projections. So what we just extend for 50 years from our current status and we consider our future status. So one of the main questions that we had was this in the survey. I'm gonna go to the next slide. Okay, so the survey that we sent you, we asked, what would you want to see as the 50-year baseline? So the question that the answers could be just a lump 50 years going back to the historical portion. We could replicate whatever years, like we could add two of the recent 25 years twice, or we could add the recent 10 years like 5 times back to back. So we kind of provided examples of that, and we had another option that you could choose. As you can see, like the responses were a bit different from each other, but the most votes or the most count goes to the recent 50-year. Also, the repeat of the last 25-year had a large amount of votes, but we think that we might be able to just move ahead with the 50 years, like going back. One concern about using the 50 years was basically it might not capture the most recent years enough, like the changes in the past 20 years, and this is a valid concern. On the other hand, if you use the last 25 years, you might lose some of the things that happened before the 2 year, like before that 25-year period. So our direction based on the survey and the number of results that we got is using the last 50 years as our baseline. Since November is a bit strange, so the TAC meeting is after the board meeting, so you're going to present this in the TAC meeting next week too, and get a final opinion and the recommendation from them too, and we seek a recommendation now too. But basically, based on the results of the survey, it means to us that the recent 50 years would be the period that we're going to use. So if you remember last time that we presented this, we divided scenarios to what we're required to do and what we want to do for the management action. So what we're required to do is that future baseline and climate change simulation. So these two are required by SIGMA from us. Now, other scenarios are kind of required because it's a best practice to do the GSP, but it's not outlined in the regulation that you have to run this type of scenario. These two, climate change and future baseline, are actually outlined within the regulation, and we should do that. So climate change, we also had this in the previous meeting presentation, and the reason that we did it was because of the methodology that the Department of Water Resources recommended to do this climate change analysis. So we went through some of the data briefly last time, and I'm going to just summarize what the Department of Water Resources provides as a method is what is called climate time period analysis. And what it does is it provides us with four scenarios, two of them commonly used, that are called 2030 scenario and 2070 scenario. So those two provide us with multipliers that we multiply our baseline climate data like precipitation and evapotranspiration based on their location and the year, and we transform them to a 2030 condition or a 2070 condition. Basically, just transforms our period to a period like a near future, as they call it, 2030, and a far future, which is 2070. And just shows us the differences. Now, this has advantages, this has disadvantages, as we discussed. The advantage was it kind of singles out the impacts due to climate change, so you don't see that impact mixed in with other impacts that might happen, so you can just see what climate change does in 2030 and 2070. It also misses some things, like interannual variability might not be shown because we are using the baseline of historical data, which climate change has been shown to change those historical expectations. So some will be missed, some will be captured better. It's just advantages and disadvantages that we showed you. One thing that I should mention, and the reason we wanted to bring this up, is during our discussion with the Sonoma Water is not using this method in their basins. They're using a transient analysis, which means they just use the climate change scenarios and put it in the model and get a time series of results. They are a proponent of that method. It does make sense also like this. But as you can see during the survey, we asked this question: do you agree with using the DWR method, or do you want to see another method? Majority of the votes that we got agreed with using the DWR recommended approach. Sonoma obviously did not agree with that method, and we had another option that was other. So that blue thing that you see is like 2 votes. The others said that they agree with the DWR recommended approach, but also want to see a time series analysis too. So as I show here, the major comments that we saw is one is a transient method would be more appropriate for evaluating potential impacts to Lake Mendocino and surface water flows with the focus on changes that might happen to Lake Mendocino operation and the PVP. And also another comment was additional climate change simulation, if they're available, can be helpful to the basin.
Okay, Amir,
Yes.
did you want to go to the board of directors now?
I think I have still slides to go through, but we can take questions or comments here and then continue.
Okay, so the questions you've asked so far, we'll just wait to the end of your presentation. Okay.
Sure.
So you go forward.
Okay, thank you. So after climate change, one of the main scenarios that everybody wanted to see was the changes that are expected to the Paro Valley project, the PVP, and to its operations. So we asked this with a survey. Then we had this working group meeting that Laura mentioned during the update on the public meetings. And during that working group meeting, we actually came up with a good set of scenarios how to actually simulate those changes to the PVP. So I moved to the next slide without showing the results of the survey. So what came out of that meeting was it's best for this GSP and how we're doing things to bookend the scenarios that might happen to PVP. So basically having a worst case scenario, having the most possible scenario, and like the most helpful scenario, something like that. So the final 3 scenarios that we came up with that we think we can run in the model and show you the results of, based on the input that we got from Sonoma Water and other participants in the discussion that also have a say in the PVP discussions, is the first one is basically the removal of dam and no additional flows. This is our worst case scenario. So basically no extra water would come to the basin from the PVPs. It would be just natural flow in the watershed. The second option would be no change, like as it's happening right now. So the PVP stays in place. And the reason we are having that scenario is because, as was discussed in that meeting, anything that would happen to the PVP would probably take 15 years from now. So we're talking changes in 2030, 35. So we will have to continue the operation at least up to then, whatever happens to the PVP, it seems so. And the third option that was very possible, and it's kind of a best case scenario over the no change, is the run of the river. This one means that they remove the second dam, but whatever satisfies the in-stream flow requirements of Eel River goes there, and the extra would flow down from the PVP channel to the watershed. So it supplies a lot of water to the watershed. And these 3 scenarios, the good thing about them and what is helpful to us is they're already done because of the PVP discussions by Sonoma Water. So the input data seems to be available for us to be used in our simulation. So we have the capability of actually simulating this with our GS flow model and showing you the results and then moving to decisions after this. So this table that we're showing, so we're basically giving you an update on the road plan that we see now of doing these future scenarios for the next 5-6 months that we discussed the GSP. So the future baseline, as we see it, would be a 50-year representation, and we are already started working on it, as we showed you before. The climate change simulation based on the survey, we're going to use the 2 DWR provided climate period analysis. So using the DWR methodology for the climate change, we already started doing that too. For the Coyote Valley Dam releases, that is changing, and it's going to change again during the next 5-10 years. We are in talks with Sonoma Water. We agreed on an approach to actually use the input data that they produce with their reservoir operation models. And we're going to use their data into our GS flow model and then run our simulations so we can update our future projections based on the possible changes to the operation of the Coyote Valley Dam. That's very important to this basin, so it needs to be updated, and I think we have a good methodology to do that. For the PVP, as I discussed, we came up with 3 separate scenarios that we have to run. We do know that those input data is already there to Sonoma Water Works, so we're going to receive that input from them. We already discussed it with them, and they sent us some of the data already. We're going to put that into our GS flow models, and we're going to simulate that, and we can show the results. And the next step would be other scenarios. So the other scenarios are the ones that I'm going to go through after this slide. So those scenarios would be anything from increase in urban population growth in the city of Ukiah, or changes in agricultural crops, like changes to the cannabis production, or changes to the wineries, or recycled water use that we want to simulate. So those are other scenarios. The only thing that I need to mention for those is if we want to combine any of those scenarios with one of these scenarios, like if we want to show the recycled water operation changes while we also consider PVP operation changes, then the same thing that goes with PVP goes with that scenario too. So it gets a bit more complicated. Through our discussions with Sonoma and with the TAC, we wanted to show this to you. So we chose that road plan. We think it's sufficient and we can do all of that. But there are things that can be improved, and it would be good to have, but because of our timeline and what the data that we have, now it's not the time to actually do that for this round of GSP submittal, but probably for the next milestone, which happens to be in 2027, we can do additional work that would complete the work that we do now. Like one of them would be like running multiple transient simulation of climate change in coordination with Sonoma, so you can actually compare the climate change simulations in Ukiah with the other basins that they are simulating. And also USGS is producing a watershed model for Sonoma water that might be completed after we're done with our GSP. So then we can harmonize those two models with these scenarios and see the differences between them. And one other thing that might be very useful but takes a lot of time would be to integrate the reservoir operation models into these models or the USGS model, so they work in harmony. Instead of getting the data, put it into our model and assume that it should work, we can just integrate them so they work in harmony and everything is more accurate. And for other scenarios, and also PVP, because based on our discussions, there might be changes into the scenarios that we need to run. So basically, we just wanted to provide this table to you to know that there is still opportunities after submitting the GSP to work on additional scenarios to improve our understanding of the basin and also simulate other scenarios that might be helpful in adjusting some of the actions that we take. So if anybody has any questions and comments, I think I can take it right now. And then after that, I have a very smaller portion of the presentation about the other scenarios.
May I ask, Amir, this is Carrie Brown. You said Sonoma County, for their 3 basins for the climate change simulations are not using DWR methodology?
No, they're not. They are using a transient simulation of one climate change scenario that they selected based on a study that they did.
And then did I hear you say after that that you thought that was a good one to use?
No, I didn't say that that's a good one. I said all the transient simulation is also a good methodology. It's a common methodology to use. I just said about the whole, the transient simulation that you're using.
Okay, thank you.
This is Zach Robinson speaking here. I'm just kind of thinking of digesting a lot of what you just shared, Amir. One of the things that I want to focus on is it's DWR who is asking us telling us to present this report. And they're the people who will be judging and evaluating this report. So it's important that we stay on track with some of their expectations. And it sounds like they have a climate scenario that they are most likely to accept and not question. And I hope we can stay very, very close, if not spot on, to that climate scenario. So that's not a point of uncertainty when we submit our report here. I also note that we have a ton of future scenarios we can play with here. I feel like a kid in a candy store, right? So give me a handful of that, and give me a handful of this and this and this. So I want to be careful. We don't have a budget committee. I'm not even sure we have much of a budget. These are all things that haven't been worked out for the future. So let's be modest in what we're trying to achieve here. Let's just, stick close to what's expected of us under the law and what's required of us by DWR. And so Amir, like one of the things that I noticed is, let's use the word about possible scenarios we look at, but let's not use the word proposed scenarios that we look at until we have, money or perhaps agreement that those are our proposals. They're just possibilities in the candy store, and I don't want to commit to putting our hand in that bucket till we know who's going to pick up the tab.
Thank you, Zach. Yes, I personally agree, but in terms of DWR, I can't speak for them if they're okay with other types of scenarios or not. But Yes, we have all these scenarios in the survey. Just wanted to see what all the stakeholders thought about it based on the input that we got, like PVP and CVD, like the Coyote Valley Dam releases. Climate change is required. So we knew that we at least have to run these scenarios. So those are kind of given for us based on the input that we took during the past 2 years. But yeah, I'm going to go through the possible scenarios in the next slides. And if you have them and if they're worth looking at, we can actually run them too.
Anyone else? Hearing no one, go forward, Amir.
Supervisor Brown,
Yes.
I see Chris Watt unmuted. Chris, did you want to ask a question? And then I also,
Is he on mute?
he might be, but we can come back if we want Chris to comment, and then we have one caller.
Okay, so for public comment, why don't we take
Start
it
with
now?
the caller. Yeah, for this question. Caller?
Hello, this is Lucia Parmenter again. It sounds like Amir is wanting to use a bigger picture scenario, looking at maybe 50 years, which I think personally is a more reasonable approach to use than just looking at a very time-limited, immediate climate change application. So if Amir is looking at the bigger picture, perhaps 50 years, I applaud that. I think that's a sensible and a wise move, and I appreciate that. Thank you, Amir.
Thank you.
And Chris, you might just be on your computer, but raise your hand if you wanna have a comment, and we'll come back to you. I think that's it for now, Carrie.
Okay, thank you so much. Amir, go forward, please.
Thank you, Director Brown. And just a couple more slides. So as Director Robinson mentioned, so these are possible scenarios that were in the survey that one time or another were discussed during the TAC or board meetings, or were brought up by stakeholders during our interviews. So we wanted to survey the interest in them for the management purposes of the GSP. So as you can see, we asked about changes in land use and agriculture. That was one of the scenarios that we thought might happen. Second one was urban expansion, population growth, and increase in demand because of that. The third one was application of recycled water that has already started since 2018 from the city of Ukiah. The fourth one was any recharge projects that the GSA takes on as a management action. That's another scenario. And the fifth one was the changes in Lake Mendocino release that we already moved up as the Coyote Valley Dam release that you saw in the table. So for the changes in land use and ag, I have to just start for all of these scenarios. There was like mixed feelings. So it wasn't like PVP that everybody saw it as like a good scenario to run. So some said it is helpful, some said it is helpful and some said I don't think it's helpful to run this. So these are all kind of mixed response type of scenarios. So changes in land use and ag, we asked. So there was a lot of talk about cannabis cultivation. There is talk about the water rights and how the changes in the crops might be happening. So majority of respondents said that this is not helpful or not sure. That was interesting to us. And the reasons for it's not helpful is it's not that running it was not helpful. It's just there is a lot of uncertainty how this would happen, or where it would happen, or how we would simulate it, that it actually impacts the management and the GSP in itself. So it's not that it's not useful to see what happens if cannabis grows in somewhere in the basin. It's just how we can translate that into management decisions and how reliable that simulation would be. And there was comments about, so the water rights are already full in the basin, so it might be just a utilization of those rights more than now. That should be simulated. So basically, for now, we are not thinking about this as a scenario that we need to run right now. But as we go on, we can also circle back to this if a stakeholder see this as a scenario that we need to run. The urban expansion, population growth, and increase in demand. Majority said it might be helpful to run it. For us, the issue came on the difference of opinion in how we actually want to run it, because there were comments about growth would be more than was predicted before. There were comments that the growth didn't even happen before as it was predicted. So we asked, should we talk to the city? And that seems to be the most reasonable way to just talk to the city and see how much growth would happen. But basically, we didn't see an agreement in the trend of the historical population growth or population increase in Ukiah and in the basin. So this is something that we're thinking about. We're not 100% yet sure that we're going to run this, but the most reasonable path would be for us to coordinate with the city of Ukiah and use their input to simulate this scenario. The third one that we talked about was recharge projects. Majority of respondents, as we talked about it last time too in the TAC meeting, 2 times ago actually, sees it as helpful. This is one management action that we are thinking about and we are talking to stakeholders about. So the scale and location of such scenario is still fuzzy because we are still developing this decision in the TAC, but we see that as a scenario that we might run if we actually fruits as a management action and we actually start a pilot recharge project in the basin. And the changes in lake medicine, I just put this slide here, but we already talked about it. So changes in lake medicine operation stems from the FIRO that is ongoing, and also the supplemental application that Sonoma Water did a couple of years ago. So we are in coordination with Sonoma Water, as I talked about, and we're going to have this implemented. And this is a scenario that needs to be combined with PVP2 and any other scenarios because it affects the water system in the basin anyway. Recycled water, that was the scenario that everybody seemed helpful. We want to run this. We talked to City of Ukiah during our last call with Sean White. Based on an input that we got, we can run this. It's just recycled water seems not to be changing in the near future. So basically it's a constant recycled water delivery as it was in 2018 and 19. So this is an easy scenario. We're just going to show that to you, but it would be a simple scenario to be honest, based on the input that we got. And with that, I just open it up. So we wanted to see if you have, so we tried to put in the survey whatever we heard from you before, whatever seemed important to you, and whatever we read about in the other documents within the basin that seemed impactful. But please share with us if you see other scenarios that you see helpful and need to be run. We will consider it, we will discuss it in the TAC, and we will bring it back to the board. And if you have time, like Dr. Robinson said, and we have to pick and choose based on the budget and the time, the most helpful ones in terms of making management decisions, but we do want your input if anything is missed here.
Directors? Further statements or comments, questions? I'd like to thank Director Robinson for his comments earlier. And yes, we probably will need shortly in the future to have that budget committee. Important, very important, I believe. So anyone comments?
Chair Brown?
Yes.
This is Sarah Duquette. Just real quickly, we do have a financial analysis that's currently underway. And so we should have some preliminary information in a memo to share with you guys probably in February, which may be helpful to talk about what implementation and costs might look like in the future. So that will be coming forward in February.
Thank you very much for that information. So Ms. Duquette, do we have any public input?
Does not look like we have any raised hands on at this time.
All right. Then we're completing the items B through C at this point, unless staff has more to add.
I think the only thing we have is if there's any additional comments from the board about any of these scenarios and interests, or what would be helpful for planning, and they can tell us now, or if they think about it and think of something, they can email or call us. Laura or Amir?
This is Al White. I have one thought on the prioritization of the possible scenarios. And it looked to me like some of them amounted to a significant shift in the status quo in terms of water. And others looked like smaller shifts, like the recharge or something like that, versus the loss of the Potter Valley project or something like that. So I would say, from my standpoint, priority should go with the things that their change would have the greatest downstream impact, and the lower impact ones would be lesser priority. That's all I have to say.
Anyone else? I would like to endorse what Director White just spoke about. Directors, do you have input as well?
Crane, I concur.
Okay. Director Robinson? I think you're on mute.
I'm sorry, was there a question for me?
Do you concur with the comment of Director White?
Absolutely. Whatever we can do to kind of box in the smaller scenarios by identifying the larger scenarios makes sense to me.
Okay, thank you. So, Ms. Duquette, that is direction from the board.
Maybe, can I just jump in with a little, because I totally agree with you on going first to what makes a big potential change. But we need to remember that anyway, a piece of the GSP will also be looking at actions that actually the GSA can make happen. So also in the next 5-10 years. So while we look at the big picture scenarios, we need to keep in mind what is more reasonable in terms of things that the GSA can control, so that can happen. Like I know that those will be for sure having smaller impact than the big PVP scenarios, but unfortunately, it's important to show that there is some ideas on how to be proactive eventually. So, and just to keep it in the back of your mind, and maybe once we start running the scenario and showing the big impacts, we can also start thinking about what we can include as project and management actions that the GSA can control, so that has some authority on. Sorry, I'm done.
Okay, thank you. So anyone else?
This is Al White again. My question then, to Laura, we have the ability possibly to control these smaller things. I feel a little odd coming up with things to do because we can, as opposed to they're necessary. So I just want to be sure that when we approach these things with the state, that we're talking about things we feel are necessary. We've sort of come into this thing expecting that in the end, we'll see that we have a relatively stable groundwater system, and that we may not need to do a whole lot of actions other than a lot of more targeted monitoring. So I think I made that point there. Thank you.
And that's a great point, Al. So I wanted to point out the idea of the small project, but you're right. If we can make a good argument, then that's something that I just, my comment was mostly to let's keep an eye on all the possible moving parts, and then we kind of all together decide. The other problem, and we may need to have also discussion with the DWR on how, because I mean, these big changes like the PVP are something that are down the road, and probably not even happening in the time frame that we can really that maybe even after 2042, from what I understand, or really late toward 2042. But that was a great point.
I would just like to say the last relicensing and whatever was going to happen with that license, I think took 30 years. So
Yeah.
I won't be here probably. It'd be beyond my time. So any other comment? Moving forward on our agenda to item number 7, director's reports. Directors, do any of you have a report? Okay.
Director Brown, or Chair Brown,
Yes.
I see one public comment that came in. I think it might have been for 6E. Caller, you can press *6 to unmute.
I'm kind of in the dark as to what the big concerns were and what the little concerns were that people are alluding to. Like, let's keep it targeted on the big items and not the little items. Are there a few points, a few big items versus what are the big items that people are concerned about? In terms of what they can control and can't control for this report.
I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, Laura, that the big items or the scenarios that we wanted to run are focused on page 25 of the agenda packet, future scenarios to be run for GSP submittal. And some of the smaller items are, what would it look like if we put in a water recharge project? What would it look like if we expanded recycle watering or use of recycled water?
Thank you.
Okay, any other public input? So, Ms. Duquette, we are already getting close to adjournment. The date of our next meeting?
The date of our next meeting is February 11th.
Okay.
And information and the agenda for our technical advisory committee will be going out soon, and that will be November 18th. If any of you on the call would like to join.
Okay.
I would like to say at this time, thank you, Carrie, for all your work in this endeavor, because when February comes, you will have become a member of the watching group to make sure that we're doing the right thing. But thank you for all your efforts toward this end.
Well, thank you very much. It's been a journey learning about all of this. Okay, then we will be adjourning. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you.
Carrie. Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you.